Hello and welcome to Uncle Nene's Nerdcast. I'm your host, Nathan Fletcher, aka Uncle Nene. Today we have a really fun show. A great filmmaker. He is an award-winning director known for the MMA drama EFC and has an upcoming sci-fi project, Genesis. We're going to talk about that. He highlights. His highlights include 30 plus international awards, and so we're super excited to have him here. Welcome to the show, Jaze Bordeaux.
Well, thank you for having me. By the way, I do love Uncle Nene. It's so catchy, and it's the name that makes you laugh and smile every time you hear it or say it. It's just I just get this giggle when I hear it. Right? Just
That's great. Thank you. Yeah, my nieces and nephew gave me that name a long time ago, and it stuck. And so when I was trying to figure out what name am I going to call my podcast, it became clear. Definitely Uncle Nene's Nerdcast. That's clearly I am America's nerdy uncle. That's my goal. So. All right, so Jays, you've got a really interesting background. I'd like to start with kind of your origin story. You know, was there a certain point in your life where you just knew you wanted to be a filmmaker, or did it gradually grow into something? Is there a certain moment that, like, okay, this is the moment I knew I had to be a filmmaker no matter what?
well, I it was a gradual process, but there were definitely two very defining moments that pretty much dictated the path I was walking on. And I like to tell people sometimes the first one, my background was more in finance, corporate finance as well. So I like to tell people the first defining moment for me, I feel like the universe called me, literally. I just had gotten an unusual call walking off an airplane in Vancouver from a filmmaker in Western Canada that was looking to raise funds for a film slate, which was completely foreign to me at the time, right? But the call, although I dismissed it right away because it was the industry, everything about it was unknown to me, it just something lingered in the back of my head for weeks, and then it turned into months, and then I was moved, compelled to go and investigate, just understand what the industry was, what the products, films, how are they made, um, and how are they delivered to the audience, and all the various aspects and elements that go or that revolve around that, mostly from a business standpoint. Like, how do you take a concept and get it into the marketplace? So that was the first defining moment, which ultimately got me to a place where, looking into the future, we realized that streaming, this is 2010, was going to be king
Okay.
tut.
Yep.
We figured by 2021, you're going to have all kinds of platforms fighting each other for subscriptions, and they
Mhm.
need compelling content just to hold the audience. So it did set me into a producing path, right?
Right.
Later, what the other defining moment that propelled me more into a direction path that as a director, although it was kind of always the plan. Everything I was doing was leading towards that, anyways. But there was one very compelling, defining moment, and when I look back, I do chuckle at it. And I love to tell the story because this revolves around a very famous sci-fi film.
Okay. All right.
And I had a really dear friend of mine's who was having a birthday, and I called her up. I said, "Hey, I know you're alone studying. Let me just boom real quick birthday celebration." And she said, "Absolutely, but I'm gonna flip it around. I want to take you to go see a specific film." Right?
Okay.
It didn't even click in my head which one it was.
Okay.
I thought it might be some horror film or something comparable to that, and it turned out to be Interstellar.
Okay. Okay.
I should have known,
Yep.
but it didn't click. It was the opening night, and we went to go see it. And by the time we got to the end of the film, she said, "Hey, I wanted you to see this because that's the level I see you at with
Oh,
your next
nice.
slate of projects." So it kind of solidified or defined my path more in terms of directing. And interestingly enough, the next film uh, up for us is, I guess we'll talk about it later, Genesis, which I say is very Nolan-esque, Inception level on every
Okay.
metric,
All right.
budget-wise, and everything else. So that when that finally comes out,
Yeah.
the origin points of that would have started from way back then. So those were two very defining moments for me,
So
and they were quite gradual leading
yes,
in.
your friend there just, I think, having someone that believes in you really is a powerful thing. And so hats off to them, right? You grew up across diverse cultural landscapes. How did experiencing different cultures and narratives shape your perspective as a storyteller?
So I grew up, I can say I'm a true North American as a Canadian, having grown up in the States and coming back into Canada. So having seen, uh, both sides of the continent,
Hmm.
East Coast to West Coast. I mean, there's so much diversity, I think, in North America. Sometimes are a little bit, people outside of North America are a little bit surprised how much diversity we do have.
Right.
So I do feel fortunate that I've been exposed to so many different groups of people. But I always say, when you're writing, it's interesting when you're thinking of characters, how you're pulling from all all the groups of people, everybody you've ever met, all the experiences, every kind of community. I feel like the more exposure you have, the more diverse your characters and stories can be.
Hmm.
So as much as, for example, we're focusing on a sci-fi film slate over the next 10 years, which obviously it's been the thing I've been working towards.
Hmm.
uh, I easily could pivot to, for example, a short film that we have coming out that is largely art house and it's also based on an LGBTQ story, right?
Okay.
Or we can pivot to other sports dramas like we did with EFC, which
Hmm.
goes in a completely different type of direction. So the diversity gives you, I feel, more opportunity to pivot into different stories. You're not particularly stuck in a genre or a type of stories or certain types of characters. So I feel
Yeah.
like it really broadened my horizons and my range in terms of just the direction you can go with anything you're working on, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's dig into EFC for a second before we move on to those next future projects. EFC was your breakout film, and it's for those watching at home. It's a woman's mixed martial arts drama, and you directed and produced it. So, what inspired you to tell that story of perseverance through an MMA lens? That's not something that I think a lot of people would choose to do. So I imagine there's a pretty good story of something that maybe, or a person, that place, or something that kind of grabbed you and said, "Oh, this is how we want to tell this story."
I have always been interested in telling stories, and lately I think I figured out where the origin came from, which I can get into later.
Okay.
But I've always been really interested in telling stories with women in like these non-traditional kind of roles. They're not the
Hmm.
girl next door. It's not the typical rom-com type scenario. It's messy. It's stories that could show more versatility. And I think obviously that comes from a lot of the women I grew up with, starting with my mother and my aunts and even my wife right now, very strong women that have mapped out my point of view or
Hmm.
worldview or ideologies. And so I've always thought that it would be great just to be able to showcase more versatility when it comes to like women on screen, right?
Okay.
just because sometimes there's a little bit of a hindrance towards it. And perfect example with EFC, when we decided we were going to do it, we talked to distributors and pitched them, and we were literally told that, hey, well, stories like that don't really sell, they don't quite work in the market. And I would say, well, it hasn't really been done before. And they would say, well, there's a reason why it hasn't been done before, because we don't think it's going to actually work or sell, right?
Yeah.
And for 2 years, that's all we heard.
Right.
And we decided to do it anyways because all of a sudden there was an uptick in a movement around women in sports,
Yeah.
women's in mixed martial arts, like
Well,
the,
yeah, the
yeah.
the uptick in fans, particularly UFC, that really get excited about the women's fights. There has been this kind of increase in that, and I think that the timing of your film really capitalized on that, and that's great that you were able to do that.
Well, even more so, and the year after we announced that Halle Berry came out and started doing production on her own MMA film, Bruised.
Yeah.
But more so, I think when I look back at EFC, what I'm really proud of is that we were told no, we did it anyways, and I do believe we had our finger on the pulse of the zeitgeist.
Yeah.
But in 2025, when I start, obviously EFC was released in 2024. All of a sudden, I'm seeing a lot of these films with women in these non-traditional roles, whether it's boxing, it's wrestling, it's whatever it is. There's all of a sudden there's like this move now where there's been a bigger surge of these films getting released. And so when I look at the time frame they're coming out, I'm like, well, we all kind of started at the same kind of time, so obviously there was something in the air. And as they're getting released, I think there's more opportunities being created. Sydney, Sweden, I think, is doing a film about a famous boxer as well.
Okay.
And there's more and more stuff getting announced. So I know that we had a little bit of an impact, however tiny that might be. I
Yeah.
know we did have some form in some degree in some way, and I'm glad we were able to make that contribution anyways, because I think obviously with what I'm seeing, the market does want that,
Yeah.
and I feel like we were right in making that argument. But on that note, I like to tell people that I feel like my worldview is shaped by all the episodes I watched of Star Trek as a kid.
Well, now you're talking my language, buddy.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
A-
Tell me about
a-
that.
And recently, literally over the past few months, I decided to go back and watch Star Trek Voyager, right?
Okay. Yeah.
And because I had went
Admiral
back and
Janeway,
watched,
Captain Janeway.
yeah, and I mean, I went back and watched Next Generation as an adult, and that's where
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, okay, I think I realize where a lot of my ideas and thoughts come from watching this as an 8-year old.
Yeah.
But going back watching Voyager, and I'm like, wow, you know what? Captain Janeway, the character, was quite something, right? Talk about
Yeah.
women in non-traditional roles.
Yep.
Like they really defined that character from so many levels, right?
Yeah.
Just from like the leadership position, the tough position, almost like a motherhood kind of position.
Yeah.
I was really impressed going back, watching it as an adult and seeing what they did with her. And there was, again, other female characters on that show. And I'm like, well, all right, okay.
Yeah.
All right, this goes back to the '90s a bit, and I
Yeah.
see this series didn't just stop shaping my worldview with Next Generation and
Yeah.
actually continued on a little bit more. So going back to see how they did have those themes of women in these non-traditional, obviously for Star Trek, they hadn't showcased that before.
Yeah.
Um, but they really went there with Voyager. Now that going back and looking at those episodes, I find that it might be, should I say, maybe one of the more underappreciated series of the franchise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny. There are a lot of diehard Voyager fans out there, and I always appreciated the series, not as much as TNG, because I think it was just more of the timing of my life, being how old I was. I was born in 78. So when TNG came out, I was more at that kind of very formidable age. And So I just loved TNG. And by the time Voyager came out, I was a little bit older and, doing what teenagers do. So but I think I look at one of the things that's interesting with the TV business back then. It was much more difficult for a syndicated show to be something that wasn't very formulaic, and so they really did take a risk with that. And it wasn't like it is today, where there's so many outlets and so many networks where you can find a niche network or niche streamer and do something that's different. And before then, I think you had movies with like Alien with Sigourney Weaver, and of course T2 with I mean James Cameron, of course, always puts a strong woman in his movies, and you had there was definitely things like that in the movie front, but a TV series, a syndicated TV series, it was very cutting edge, very very progressive. When
Yeah.
you think of EFC, what look at like your early projects and the journey of making EFC. What's a key lesson or takeaway that you've gained as a filmmaker that you could share with any filmmakers who are watching?
Any filmmakers who are watching, it's what I could share with them and what I usually do usually comes down to a few different points. One, anything you're doing, it does take time and you can't really measure or compare to others. And this can apply to anybody anywhere right now.
Hmm.
Because I can give you a very specific example. Like before EFC, obviously, I had projects that I say are still in a hard drive.
Right.
Either we had to abandon them for whatever reason or whatever the situation was. When we got to EFC, and the independent film world is very interesting for those people who do not know, because when you start to produce one, all the odds are stacked against you.
Yes. Yes.
For example, we were told that a lot of independent films, I think the stat was somewhere between 83-87%, don't actually make it past production. Usually
Uh-huh.
something happens during production and they can't finish, they have to abandon the project, whatever it is. Okay.
Wow.
So we had every obstacle, the kitchen sink, table, planets thrown at us when we started production. So, literally, and especially if you're in Canada, you usually start with weather.
Okay.
I think when we decided to go into production, we were having the worst ever in the history of the country, the worst
Wow.
snow ever, the worst cold, the worst, like, everything. Even to the point where our studio's HVAC system goes down and it's
Oh
too
man.
cold to shoot, and we had people, even an actress we had getting sick, losing a third of the movie,
Oh wow.
but still having to move forward, pivot, and continue. So people ask me about that, and I said, well, I was able to do that because of the other stuff that didn't work, right? I was able to
Right.
move and transfer that experience forward, so we were able to get through that. Then starting post production and running into COVID,
Yeah.
another massive pivot point, because all of your post production plans just got thrown out the door, right?
Yeah.
And we saw the industry completely revamp, reshape to move into the world it's in right now in 2025, which is all a great thing. But still, at the time, you still have to pivot, change, move, adjust, and accordingly, right?
Yeah.
And what we had understood is 50% of productions don't even get past that point. And then once you're past that point, getting into distribution phase becomes even harder. So, um, patience, persistence, is probably the most important things
Hmm.
you need as a filmmaker, or I think anybody in any business or
Wow.
aspect of life. It does take time, but I also go back to the point where with focus, you can accomplish a lot in a very short period of time, and
Absolutely.
build momentum from it. So, patience for sure, number one.
Yeah.
I don't think you get anywhere without it. And some people might say, well, it's easy to say because when you're in the moment, it's so frustrating. But patience is everything. It's
Yeah. And
everything.
I applaud your resiliency, going through those obstacles and pushing through to not give up. That's very admirable, and I applaud you for that. You know, after EFC's success, and you earned over 30 awards for including best directorial debut. Um, what you moved into what you're now doing, which is speculative fiction, sci-fi, and fantasy realms. Something that's near and dear to me. What draws you first before we get into the specific projects? And I'm going to get to Genesis, Monopoly, Starry-Eyed. I want to talk about all that, but before we go down into those specific projects, I'd really love to know what draws you to these genres in general. Is it something just growing up as a Star Trek TNG kid, or is there something more you can speak to of what really draws you there?
Well, with sci-fi, obviously my favorite genre, and everything we do is building up to it. I feel like there are no limits to where
Yeah.
you can go and the message you can put across and what you can do with it versus other genres. Sometimes you're restricted because uh, the suspension of disbelief. People will complain, that's not believable. We can look at the Fast and Furious, right? It's an action franchise. Love the franchise exactly for what it is.
Right.
And ironically, I love how the more ridiculous they get, I actually love it even
Yeah.
more. I'm just
Yeah, when
so
they launched the car into space, that one, I was like, "Oh my god, this is amazing." Like,
yeah,
it's ridiculous. Like, obviously it's ridiculous, but it's so fun. It doesn't take itself too serious that you're just
yeah.
enjoying like what are they going to do next? You're not expecting, a realistic movie. So your expectations are met. So yeah, I totally get that.
Yeah, but then I'll hear the echoes of people. Well, that can't happen. You can't
Yeah.
put a car in space, but with sci-fi, you
Right.
could do that, and everybody would suspend their
Yeah.
disbelief long enough to just follow the story, follow the scene, see where you're going,
Yeah.
because all of those barriers have been completely removed. So I feel like sci-fi just gives you this level of freedom to just explore and tell stories that maybe you couldn't if you were limited in some of the other genres like
Yeah.
drama or whatever the case might be, right?
Yeah. There's a little more unexpected things that can happen. There's a little more freedom when you're developing those story beats, right? Um, what is so? Let's talk about Genesis. One of your upcoming projects, it's a high concept sci-fi thriller. And what I've read is that Genesis imagines a world without original thought. That is a chilling idea. What can you tell us? I know you don't want to give away too much, but what can you tell us about this film's premise and the themes you're exploring with it?
We have this was there's a couple of films that I've been always wanting to do, and Genesis is one of them.
Okay.
So if for whatever reason I wasn't able to do anything after that, if I was able to do that one film, I think I would be so satisfied,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It is along the lines of other films like The Arrival, also Inception,
Okay.
that you can see behind me. So it is very cerebral, uh,
Okay.
to say that, but it envisions a world where first original thoughts don't exist anymore, and so there's a race to try to generate or develop these original thoughts, but this society tries to monetize it, much the way we see the stock market, like a commodity.
Okay.
um, and so you have these thinkers out there trying to develop these original thoughts, but ultimately we have to get in the story to the point where we understand what an actual original thought is.
Hmm.
Where do they actually come from? Do they actually come from us? Or is it a frequency that we have to tune into, right?
Interesting. Okay.
And is this something that should be monetized, or is
Right.
it, or it should be freely given to the world uh, to expand horizons and to move into new places, right?
Mm.
Um, Ultimately, those are the questions that are put there. Our protagonist makes his choice as to which direction he feels society needs to go and has to disrupt the current establishment to actually do it in a very grand fashion, right? Um, so, uh, so when you ask me about sci-fi and why I like it, we can start to tell stories like this.
Right.
I go back as an adult and I realize the stuff I was watching and at what age and how it's impacted or affected my worldview. So I'm like, I'm really glad I was watching certain things and not other stuff.
Yeah.
Uh, so it's like, so, all right. So as a filmmaker, I realized there is that capability to plant those seeds of like these ideas. We don't talk about what does a world with no original thoughts look like and how do we evolve beyond it. And even the next project we have after that, what does the world look like without a monetary system if it collapsed, right?
And
um,
is that
right,
Monopoly
that's Monopoly, yeah,
with an
which
I?
is with an I.
Monopoly with an I.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Because in that story, essentially the money system was created in Monopoly, Italy. It's a real city.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Within that structure, you find the origins of money going back into that city. Uh,
Well, that one jumped out at me because I am all about AI and what it really means. And so, from what I understand, that's the global financial collapse triggered by a hidden AI.
yes.
Is the story on that one? What you know? Are there certain real world issues or questions you're probing with Monopoly?
Yes. Is Bitcoin a Trojan horse?
Right. Good
uh,
question.
does it come back to bite us later or
It,
not?
right.
In the story, is that the downfall to the entire monetary system? And is it on purpose or not?
Mm,
Right?
yeah.
Not to reflect real world. I'm not telling anybody that it is or isn't.
Right.
But we're definitely probing the questions. With Genesis, we do also touch on ASI, artificial superintelligence,
Hmm.
as being the key factor on how thoughts are monetized,
Right.
uh, without
So they
going too
both kind of
deeply
have a
on
tie
things.
back to recent,
Current,
developments with how, AI is progressing and the exponential rate that it's progressing. And at what point do we achieve super intelligence? And what does that mean when there is no information that is private, or what I mean by private is no one owns any kind of secret information when all of information is available on your device. That's really interesting. um, I guess, so blending, when you're thinking about approaching something like financial intrigue with AI, how do you, as a storyteller, kind of approach that? Is there, any process that you use to, approach blending those two things together so you are able to maintain the story and the character developments and all that?
yeah, it is interesting because from a storytelling standpoint, you want to be ahead of the curve, and obviously technology and all of that is changing so rapidly
Yeah.
that you could easily, let's say a year from now, go to production with your story and um, that information's out of date,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So largely what I like to do is focus on the broad theme,
Right. And
but
not to
still,
get too specific on technicals of
uh,
how
yeah,
many megabytes or,
uh,
terabytes or, yeah, I gotcha.
exactly. Focus on the broad themes and bring it back to the characters and that people are going to connect to and relate with their journey through the whole process, regardless of just like in real life.
Yeah.
These events are happening whether we like them or not. They're in full
Yeah.
force, but we all have our own personal journey through it. And so from that perspective, it's coming back to the character, focusing on their journey. We have the broad theme established. We've asked the questions, and how does this particular character now respond or react to all of these things, and how is his world impacted by all of these events, right?
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's now I'll give Star Trek a lot of credit. I think they did almost everything right. The only thing I realized that they could have done different, they should have made the ship's characters. They're always
Mm,
referring to them, computer, do this, right?
yeah.
And it's like, suppose computer, the ship was called Siri, right?
Yeah.
or,
What was
or
it on? Was it on Discovery where the ship's computer became sentient? One of the series, I believe, explored that concept. That it became sentient, the ship's computer. I think it was Discovery, but I'm not sure on that.
that's on my list to go back to. I remember seeing a part of season one, and I've wanted to circle back to it. And I
Yeah.
think they had something that transported the ship that was sentient. But
Yeah. Yeah, something along those lines.
yeah,
Starry-Eyed is a short film that you made, that you directed. It follows a young woman at a crossroads, grappling with self-worth and identity. What story were you telling in Starry-Eyed, and how did working on a shorter, more personal project influence you as a creator?
so Starry Eyed again is another interesting one. The writer and I, the writer Carlo Molo, he wrote this story, and it was largely focused on a lot of the challenges that we go through every day mentally,
Hmm.
just some of that mental struggle. And because essentially most people were fighting ourselves every day, right? I think the representation where you have an angel on one shoulder, the devil on the other shoulder, and there's this fight going on between yes I can and no you can't, or you
Right.
should or no you shouldn't, or why'd you do that, this constant that sometimes the self-love doesn't shine through.
Okay.
So Starry Eyed was kind of designed to just mirror that everyday journey that we're taking, but it's almost like a reminder of, hey, don't be too hard on yourself, right?
Right.
There's a lot of self love that kind of needs to happen. So it was very different than what we've been doing. It leaned more towards art house just because of the experimental nature that we went
Yeah.
with it. And we took a lot of risks with it in terms of how we want to present it to the audience.
Hmm.
But largely it was designed to kind of tell that story of, hey, we don't really need to be that rough on ourselves every day. There's a lot of things we can hug ourselves for, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you can think of with that film, or project, that taught you, or that you've carried into your feature length projects?
Um, from from a filmmaking standpoint, that was also a project that had to go through a lot of stages of evolution.
Okay.
So the story was kind of changing as we were in production.
Hmm.
Part of the things I think I personally decided as a
Hmm.
filmmaker is that, all right, when we go into production, we're going to make sure these scripts are absolutely 1,000% locked, sealed, and delivered. Um, I mean, you pivot if you have to. You do what you have to do when things come up or circumstances. But that was one of those where um, a lot of things were evolving as we went along, which is fine to do on a project of that scale. But I heard James Gunn say something recently, which I'm in full agreement with him on. And I think they asked him about the future of theatrical exhibition. Will people keep coming to the theaters? And he gave a very cheeky response, and he said, well, paraphrase here. Essentially, he said yes, but it's also our responsibility to make films that actually have a finished script and
Yeah,
and not along the way.
right,
Um, I guess once in a while you'll have the gladiators. I mean,
right.
I hear the story about how they made that film Ridley Scott with Russell Crowe, and it will blow your mind.
Yeah, I've read some
You
things.
read
It's
it, yeah.
yeah, yeah,
They had no script, and
yeah,
they were
yep,
making it up as they went along,
yeah,
but it still worked, obviously, because he had a
yeah,
great director that can make it work.
yeah,
Uh, but essentially, I would say for sure, you know, you got to be sure, like when
yeah.
you're going forward, that this is it, right? It's as
If it
locked as
was me,
locked
I'd
could
want a
be.
screenplay in my hand, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a couple questions about your creative process and storytelling philosophy. You know, do you find certain themes that keep popping up in your stories? Are there certain, big questions or ideas that you're most passionate about, just keep coming back to over and over?
There are always questions. I think in everything, because it's almost the same exercise, I have to go back and strip this out so that the story could be very focused.
Mm,
Um, but one of the common themes that comes up a lot for me is the monetary system.
mm,
And there are a lot of questions that I propose around the system that, we all have collectively adopted,
hmm.
right?
Yeah,
Essentially, we've all, subscribed to it, adopted to it,
yeah.
and everything. And I do always come back literally I see the common thread in every single thing I do, and I see the questions I proposed, right? What happens if? Um, Essentially, what I ended up doing, and this is how Monopoly got developed, is I had to make sure I took it out of everything else and just focused it on one story. But
Okay.
it is a thread that comes up every time for me.
Hmm.
Just because, I mean, there are questions you have to ask. If you look at the system, is it a fair system? Is it um, what happens if it does collapse? Can we move past it? Is there a
Right.
future like we saw in Star Trek where they're beyond it and they're living in a utopia without a monetary system,
Yeah, they
right?
never explore that. I've always been fat. One of the things I loved about Star Trek universe was that very utopian view that humanity pretty much has it figured out, right? Like we got it all figured out. We had first contact with the Vulcans and we are like, okay, let's stop fighting. Let's just figure out how to be together. And then humans just figure it out. And so it is interesting that they don't really explore the details on that, but that's just probably a good idea. But yeah, I think that that's interesting. Do you come back to that question because of kind of like personal experience makes you really question that, or have you given thought of why you keep coming back to that question of the monetary system?
Yeah, I personal experience, yeah, and also because when you look at it, it's largely feels like it's a system that's based on winners and losers. Somebody has to win or somebody has to lose for somebody to win, and on every level, it doesn't matter which one it is. It could be as simple as just a lottery. People have to lose $1 for somebody else to win all the other dollars, right?
Hmm.
And it's just, is there a better system? Like,
Yeah.
is there like a better way to do this
Yeah.
where it's a little bit more leveled out? Why does it have to be quite, why is it, for example, this country, without going into all the nuances and politics of the world, but
Right.
why is it this country that's rich in all these resources somehow don't get the benefits of what they have, but then this country does? It's just it seems lopsided at times, where sometimes you wonder what a more leveled out playing field would look like.
Hmm.
Um, but then I keep coming back to the fact that we've all subscribed to it, so everybody's agreed to the system. So unless we collectively decide we want something else, then how would that change? And do we know that we want something else, or is there something else even available, right?
Right. Yeah.
So that's, I guess, from a world view standpoint, just sometimes things don't make sense to me.
Well,
And
that's what's wonderful about science fiction in particular is that you can explore all the big questions, what is consciousness? What is the soul? What happens if the money goes away? What happens if our electricity goes away? I've always thought about how quickly would our society completely collapse if there was no electricity, right? There's all of those kinds of things that we get to explore. What is the next phase in evolution? Humans are getting taller, but what about mental abilities? There's so many questions we get to explore with science fiction that how does when quantum and AI intersect? What's going to happen? Quantum computing and AI. So, yeah, that's what I do love about it is all those big questions. What kind of fuels your creativity for developing stories? Do you draw inspiration from real world events, history, art forms, personal experience? Do you have dreams at night and jot them down? Like, what's your what's really fueling that creativity?
I think I go deep into thoughts, and I think a lot of times I'm catching them in the air, resonating. My wife will tell you, even when I was sitting down writing Genesis, it was almost like I'm tapped into something and I'm just
Mm,
transcribing, right? And I'm just seeing it and watching the story being written right in front of me, even though I'm the one like typing it out.
yeah.
It's just cool to like, oh, what happens next? And I'm just typing it. Oh, what's going next, right? And
Yeah.
so a lot of times it's just they're thinking deeply into things ends
Hmm.
up inspiring these ideas, which kind of start to turn into these stories. And I see these stories kind of writing themselves like literally in front of me, right?
Yeah.
So it almost becomes like this transcription motion or sequence going on, right? Typically, what I would say is that with a lot of films, sometimes they may not be perfect. Like you can take sometimes the most imperfect film, and it's like great, everybody loves it, and it comes across so well, right? But sometimes there's this intangible element that goes into it, right?
Hmm.
And and with and with that, I feel like with some of the inspiration, there's just this intangible element that you're kind of connecting to,
Yeah.
that all of a sudden it just gives life to this thing. And so I find largely it comes from when you're just sitting not doing anything except maybe looking at the water and just
Yeah.
kind of meditating, and all of a
Stillness
sudden,
of the mind opens the door. Yeah.
yeah, these thoughts, you start asking questions, and the questions turn into something. So typically what I would do is I pull out my phone and I start recording.
Okay.
And so I have recordings for years and years and years on ideas and thoughts and this and that and how it develops, and the plots and this, and then I come back to it later when I can connect to it more,
Yeah.
and start developing or writing it out, right?
That's great. That's great. Um, all right. Well, before we wrap up, I am going to do a lightning round. We do that at the end of every episode. So I'm just going to ask you some quick questions and get your take. It's supposed to be fun. So, but we'll see what happens here. All right. This is always a good one for my creative sci-fi storytellers. If you could live in any sci-fi fantasy universe anywhere, what would it be and why? Would it be Middle Earth, Star Wars Galaxy, Star Trek's Federation, Marvel's universe? What is there a particular sci-fi fantasy universe that you would want to live in?
Just for fun, I think I might try to live in the universe where the Flash lives in. Maybe I maybe
Oh,
Yeah, because
Okay.
if I had to be a superhero, I think it'd be the Flash, right?
Wow, that's a good one. That's a
Yeah,
deep cut. I hadn't thought about that one. Okay, nice one.
yeah.
Okay, so dream collaboration. Name a filmmaker or artist you'd love to collaborate with on a project, and this is living or dead, any era. So throughout time, is there one you'd want to work with?
Well, that's a no-brainer. I think you can look behind me, and I think it kind of gives it away.
All right. Well, he's still alive, so there's a chance.
Yeah, there's a chance with Christopher Nolan. Yeah, but I like to do something completely ridiculous, like one of the Fast films, and
Yeah.
just
Well, he
completely.
likes those movies too.
I
So.
heard, yeah, I heard that.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, Christopher Nolan is amazing. All right, so if you could borrow one superpower or futuristic technology from a movie to use in real life, on what would it be? So this would be like, okay, a superpower or futuristic technology. So telepathy, time machine. Like what is there a one that just comes to mind? Like, oh, I wish I had that.
Well, I think I kind of gave that away on my first answer, but I definitely would take the Flash's superpower,
Yeah.
right?
Yep, you did. Yep,
You
you
could,
answered
yeah,
that. That's for sure.
yeah.
Uh, okay, so off, I guess, what we call off-duty passions. So when you're not making movies, what is a hobby or nerdy passion that you indulge in to recharge? Are you a secret gamer, comic book reader? Do you build models? Like, what is there some kind of hobby you have, or is your life just filmmaking?
um, I have a lot of want to do hobbies, right? Like, my list keeps getting larger as the years go by, and I think you asked that question. One of the things that I was looking at today was I want to kickbox. I want to get into
Okay.
kickboxing, right?
Yeah.
And I know for someone who just made an MMA film, I don't do any of the mixed martial arts, but it's been on my list for many, many, many years.
Okay.
And kickboxing is definitely one of the things I want to, check out, right? Or would do
Yeah.
for the most part. So that would be definitely at the top of my list right as of today, right?
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to check in a few months and see if you've started that or not. All right. So, last question. In one word, how would you describe your storytelling style or philosophy?
My storytelling style or philosophy, it's I feel like I am very collaborative, but I am someone who likes to focus on broad themes, sometimes to the point where they're bigger than any one character, but always have to come back to focus on a character, right?
Okay.
It's a little bit of a booby trap for me
Yeah.
because when I look at any first draft that I do, it's like, okay, went way too much into the broad theme, need to bring it back now, and let's focus on the characters, right?
Yeah.
But I'm definitely one that likes to look at the big picture, the broader theme, and put the stakes into that, right?
Okay. Well, that's great. Well, I tell you what, Jays, it's been great talking to you. I really enjoyed our conversation. I wish you a lot of success. Is there anything you'd like to tell our audience that they should go check out, a website or anything they can do to find out more about your work?
Well, we talked about EFC earlier,
Mhm.
which has been released throughout North America, and that's available on all digital platforms,
Okay.
as well as the UK, Spain, Mexico, and several other territories. It's still being rolled out in different territories this year,
Okay.
but that will be widely available, and you can follow or find any information on any social platform at EFC Movie.
Okay.
Um, Look out for Let Go. It's a psychological thriller. That's a really fun film. We shot it across 14 different cities in Europe,
Oh wow.
and that'll probably be out on a festival circuit in the early part of 2026. Out later in 2026. But you can follow the film at Let Go Movie on Instagram and other social platforms as well. And of course, for me, I'm easy to find on anywhere, any social platform at Jaze Bordeaux.
All right. Well, thank you. I appreciate your time. I wish you the best of luck. For our viewers at home, don't forget, subscribe to Uncle Nene's Nerdcast. And as I say in every episode with, I implore you, for the love of God, stay nerdy. Thanks for watching.